I'm Wendy Heim, Marketing Director for Red Prairie's Global Transportation Group. Welcome to this edition of Experts on Demand. This is a video series that brings together a group of experts in order to convey insight into exciting yet sometimes overwhelming topics within the transportation industry in order to help you gain a better perspective. I hope you enjoy this topic session on global trade management. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining me for this conversation with a little opportunity to discuss, some of the ramifications of what's going on in this whole area of global trade management and international trade logistics. We've certainly had a lot of interest, I think, from many of our prospects and customers, and it's a topic that just seems to be on everybody's mind. But it's also a little bit of a confusion, and I thought maybe Adrian, I'd start with you. And just, maybe you could help us, to understand a little bit the difference here between what are we meaning by, global trade management, international trade logistics,
Right.
What's the distinction? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think international trade logistics has been a term that's been around for a long time. And, historically it kind of pertained primarily to trade compliance and export compliance. So a lot of, particularly on the software side, so a lot of the so-called ITL solutions back in the early mid-90s were really focused on export and compliance. When you look today, global trade management is a much broader topic, and it not only encompasses the compliance piece of it, but encompasses the transportation piece of it, and probably the area that's getting a lot of attention these days is the financial supply chain. So not only the physical movement of the goods, but also the financial movement, the movement of money, and how that impacts some of the decisions companies make as they're looking at their supply chains and their operations around global trade.
So much broader than just the logistics piece of it. It's really extending into the whole organization being involved in the financial pieces, legal ramifications, and all that.
Right. Yeah. So it was purely, I would say ITL was predominantly focused just on the trade compliance group within companies in the past.
Right.
Today, global trade management, to your point, really extends across procurement, logistics, trade compliance, sourcing, risk management. Really, it's really a platform that multiple groups within the company focus on and contribute to.
Yeah, and I might add to that, in the last 5 years, of course, the whole security issue and the regulations around that require good information, good data.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean there's some consequences to companies? I mean, around that whole security thing. I mean, is it just because Big Brother is watching companies are coming in, or why is it important?
Right now, it's an interesting question because the whole security issue revolves around trying to balance the needs of security and the needs of commerce. That we want to have the right amount of security and make sure that the nation is safe, but make sure that commerce continues to move as well. And what the government has decided they want to do is have a multi-tiered approach to that.
Right.
And the information part of that is certainly a critical component to the whole security regime.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are some of the other aspects? I mean, companies we know, we've seen kind of a movement. It's not the big guys only, the big shippers who are sort of engaging and want to learn more about how they can effectively move their goods. We've had a lot of mid-tier companies looking at outsourcing opportunities to bring goods in from more effective sources, as well as open marketplaces, and we're seeing this movement. So, what are some of the things that maybe some of the companies who are sort of entering into this space for the first time really need to be thinking about?
Well, I think that really when you look at global trade management, it's we always talk about with technology. It's not just technology; it's people, process, and technology. And I think that's certainly more. If you're going to say it's even more true in global trade arena. I mean, technology certainly can help automate the processes and help you with compliance and be able to communicate with the different trading partners. But you need to have that, what I call the human IP, the human expertise, to complement the technology side, because it's the global trade environment is just so complex and it's so dynamic. It's constantly changing in terms of the different regulations, not only here in the U.S. but in Europe, in Asia, customs modernization programs going around the world, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a human element to it that I think companies have to be mindful of.
You know, that's an interesting aspect. This idea of sort of the human intellectual processes and knowledge to really navigate these waters. But the companies who are trying to enter in this area, should they be investing in their own internal IP? Are there consulting opportunities? Should they be looking for collaborative partners, freight forwarders, and others who can sort of manage or help to navigate these waters?
Right. I think that a big part of a new company getting in will be how complex their supply chain will be when they go overseas. Because if it's one product or a similar group of products all being sourced from the same place, that's not very complex, and perhaps they can handle that on their own. But if they start sourcing from multiple countries and the number of SKUs explodes, it becomes a very complex process, and most companies have outsourced that to third parties.
Is there a threshold? I mean, are there a set of criteria I can look at my supply chain to understand that it's either currently today or will be in the future, sort of at that level, so I can understand the level of complexity that's really driving a decision one way or the other?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with how much you're willing to adapt into the future. You can make a single source decision today in China, and that may be a bad decision 3 years from now. And if you've built your entire system around trading with one country and all the import-export issues with that, and you switch to another country or bring it back, things fall apart. You have to almost start over from scratch. So, it's how complex do you think you might be, and how much flexibility do you want to have in the future as far as your company goes? The more flexibility you want, the more I would highly recommend to look to experts to do that for you, because it is a very complex, ever-evolving process.
I think it really depends on how complex and how dynamic your supply chain is. So if you're in an environment where you're working with the same set of suppliers all the time, and you've got a pretty finite and stable product portfolio, and that's something that you could probably manage more effectively internally, or at least you can put the infrastructure around that and plan for that. But if you're in an environment where you're continuously working with different suppliers every year, you're sourcing from different countries every year, and you're introducing hundreds of new products all the time that you have to classify, determine their product codes, determine their exportability and things of that nature, then it could get pretty complex pretty quickly. So every company, I think, at some point is going to reach a point that says, okay, do we want to invest internally in the people and the technology and the other infrastructure required to keep doing this in-house, or do we look to outside experts that can help us scale our business?